the Center for American Jewish History in downtown New York, I'm Mark Golub, coming to you from the American Jewish Historical Society's 2014 Emma Lazarus Awards, where tonight we will be honoring Simon Schama for the extraordinary work he has done in literature and on television, documenting the journey of the Jewish people. We'd like you to share in this wonderful event right here on JBS.
Those of us who are involved with this in any of the partner organizations or in the center itself are particularly privileged, I feel, to be the temporary custodians of the history of our people. We are learning from the past for a brighter future. And as we know, there are two great pillars of Jewish life today in the world, the United States and Israel, and of course New York is the center, and we are the pillar of that knowledge of our people's history here, where the history is stored in our archives. We have over 100 million documents.
100 million. 100
million documents that belong to the partner organizations, and the center just provides the platform for all of them, common facilities, and a way for people to work together, for people to cooperate, for people to share what they have. It's a tremendous center for scholars and for the general public to come and learn about Jewish history.
And what's tonight mean as you watch Simon Schama being honored by the American Jewish Historical Society?
I find it a beautiful, beautiful tribute to history and to one of the great, great people, along with Abba Eban, who has written recent histories of the Jewish people. I watched the series on television, and it is, for me personally, a great honor, after being here just barely a month, to be able to be a host to such a great scholar and popularizer as Simon. He's a wonderful person.
Oh, you say it so well. Kol tuv v'hatzlacha. May this be a wonderful experience for you. And we hope that our cameras and I am often here to share what you're doing, because the Center for Jewish History is doing extraordinary work, and under your leadership it will grow from strength to strength.
Well, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Joe Levy. At the 2014 Emma Lazarus Awards, I have the great pleasure of standing with Bernie Michael, who is the president of the American Jewish Historical Society, which really is the sponsor of this extraordinary evening. First of all, thanks, and you're doing a fabulous job. Mazal tov.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased you could come here tonight and join us.
I'm flattered to be here. In 30 seconds, what's the thumbnail description of the society?
We are, we like to call ourselves the future of the American past. We are very busy right now collecting all sorts of archives from different organizations. There's a tremendous danger in this country and around the world of archives from important organizations being destroyed because the organizations themselves can't hold on to them. We take them in. We are digitizing everything as fast as possible. We are creating resources for scholars and for just regular people to come and learn about their past.
Tonight we are honoring Simon Schama, who has done extraordinary work chronicling the story of the Jewish people.
Yes.
From your perspective, why is he being honored by the American Jewish Historical Society tonight?
That's a great question. Simon is a remarkable individual whose mission embodies a lot of the things that the American Jewish Historical Society tries to embody in its mission. It's taking the past, it's making it accessible both to lay people and to scholars. It's bringing the story of the Jews to the world in a way that people can understand it, appreciate it, and access it.
That's lovely. By the way, you're wonderful, and it's been an honor getting to know you. It's really, it's an extraordinary evening. All the people here are in such a good mood because they're all celebrating something important. It's not simply coming to honor Simon Schama. The people who are at this dinner right now are really supporting a piece of the American Jewish future through the American Jewish Historical Society, and Bernie Michael is doing an extraordinary job there. Thank you, my friend. It's been an honor to meet you and an honor to present this to JBS.
My pleasure.
Bernie Michael.
It is my particular pleasure, my unique pleasure, on behalf of the American Jewish Historical Society, to present the 2014 Emma Lazarus Award to our friend, Mr. Simon Schama.
Oh boy, I'm going to put this on, I think, actually. Yeah, I love gongs. Do I get... Look at that. Do I get the chocolate one as well, Rachel? Yeah. This is such a lovely occasion. I'm so thrilled. I'm honored, of course, by this this wonderful award you've given me, and I thank you very much. And I've said this before, but so forgive me but I always think at times like this of my old mentor Isaiah Berlin, who said, just because the honor you've bestowed on me is so richly undeserved doesn't mean to say I won't take it, which is, and I just have, you know. This is fantastic. I feel I've won a kind of boxing match, which I haven't. So this is such a glorious place, and none of you here take it for granted, I know. And throughout, I'm now, struggling, this won't surprise you to hear, but I mean, I'm getting to the end of volume 2 of the Jewish history in print. And when you get towards the Shoah, of course, the great horrible Death Star lurking in the galaxy of evil and malice there, you think about how can you do this? And what I was struck by in one particular year, I suppose about 18 months, maybe even 2 years, 1942, 1943, we forget that just in 1942, about 3 million of the 6 million of us were murdered at one go. What is very striking, both if you think about extraordinary historians like Emanuel Ringenblum, the pupil of Simon Dubnow, who's trying to collect daily archival records inside the Warsaw Ghetto and buries them in milk churns so that they'll be discovered after the war. Or if you think of Stephen Wise, who gets that information by the early autumn, late summer of 1942 from Gerhard Riegner in Switzerland, that there is no question that a war of complete extermination is being waged against the Jews, and attempts to alert the essentially deafened, shuffling, myopic allies as well to the scale of the horror that's going on. What you think about is that all these people were desperate to save lives, in vain as it turned out, but if lives couldn't be saved, they were intensely committed to documenting the bravery and nobility of those who were resisting their extermination, and simply the appalling dehumanization of our entire people. So this is the history. We shouldn't think of ourselves, especially in America, as endlessly reliving what my illustrious predecessor, Salo Barone, called lachrymose history. Especially in America, there's so much to celebrate and rejoice in. But from the beginning of the time when we were commanded in Shemot to Zachor on Seder nights in Passover, we are a historical culture. We are a culture of memory. We are not ultimately a culture of bricks and mortar, much as I love these bricks and mortar, of monuments, of institutions, of armies. We are a community of the spiritual life and, above all, of memory. And there was a moment, he said in one of his inelegant segues, when Emma Lazarus herself realized that. Rachel, have people talked about, Emma Lazarus? Because I'm just beginning to realize how gorgeously complicated a creature she was. I'm sure my predecessors have talked about it. So if you've heard this before, please forgive me. She was, of course, came from an assimilated family. Her father was a very wealthy sugar merchant, Moses. She hung out in a rather groupie and undignified way with Ralph Waldo Emerson, by which I don't mean undignified in a tabloid way. She was just so desperately craved his attention, which was returned. He did invite her for a long weekend in Concord, and she met the usual suspects, William Ellery Channing and so on, who and all condescended to her. And she did want the attention of the non-Jewish world. She was interested, and she was not certainly in denial about her Jewishness, but she was not a believer. She was not Orthodox in any way, and she felt shifty about her Jewishness, it's fair to say. She identified all her life long with Heine and wrote very beautifully about Heine and Heine's own complex relationship. Heine, of course, converted for his admission ticket to the Gentile world and instantly regretted it. And she said of Heinrich Heine that he was someone who was not at all enthusiastic about Judaism, but wished to advertise at every possible moment that he was enthusiastic about it. I thought it was a rather beautiful insight of her, on her part. But she goes, you'll know, I'm sure all of you, she goes to Ward Island on a day in August 1881. And it's quite early in the great new life of Jewish America. There had been a terrible pogrom in Odessa in 1871. The pogroms were going on, but she sees for the first time, and as an heir of the Grand Duchess of Letters and Poetry, sort of ethnographically slumming it a bit among, but when she's there, she's absolutely, she's transfigured by what she sees. For a start, she'd been told, or she sort of expected, I think from paintings and, stories told both uptown and downtown about them, the Ashkenazi hordes coming in, that they'd be kind of unlettered and barely literate and so on. And what she finds is something quite the contrary. She finds people in terrible distress and poverty and destitution and terror, but people who spoke feelingly and eloquently and powerfully about that experience. And that changes her completely, really. It's one of the great kind of odysseys. And she says, after that, I have no thought, no passion, no desire, save for my own people. That was an exaggeration, but it was still spoken from the heart. And then the great poem happens, the new Colossus. And thank you so much for that incredibly kind introduction, Neil, as well. And we forget the beginning of the poem, I think. And it's really not a bad poem. It's a pretty fantastic poem. But the beginning of the poem is extremely important, the part no one remembers. Why is it important? Because it comes from a deep obsession inside Jewish culture, namely the tormented relationship with Greece, which Josephus has, which Heine, her cynosure, has. It's Heine who first delivers this excessively polarized alternative between being Hellenic or Hebraic. But in Emmy Lazarus's lifetime, it's Matthew Arnold who recovers famously Heine's antithesis, or conflict, really. Both Heine and Arnold wanted to try and find a way of reconciling it, as does for a while Emmy Lazarus, the Sephardi poetess herself. But in the end, after Ward's Island, after that moment, she is a Hebrew, not a Hellene. And can you bear it if I read this poem? Because it's actually, wow, it has shades of Gerard Manley Hopkins. I must be the only person who has put Emmy Lazarus in the same sentence as a Jesuit. But it has this extraordinary, powerful assonance. It has this kind of sound music, which, for being romantic, and everybody, of course, why wouldn't we be romantic this evening here together, is a kind of Sephardi thing. It's sort of Sephardi music. So it begins polemically and wonderfully, not like, says Emma, not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs, astride from land to land. The Colossus of Rhodes, of course, one leg on each island outside Rhodes port. Here, at our sea-washed sunset gates, shall stand a mighty woman, with a torch whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp. Cries she with silent lips. Then, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free, the wretched refuse of the teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. It's a beautiful thing. It's we should applaud her. So I kind of wish she was here. When I was lucky enough, how many of you, lots of you, well, some of you, how many of you have gone through the Verrazzano Narrows and, you know, coming back from Europe? I first came to New York in 1964 and did that and saw it, and it was wonderful, and, you know, the kind of emotion of the millions flowed through me until I got to Pier, whatever it was, and my great-uncle Jew, who was the Emperor of Flatbush, picked me up, and he was one of those little old Litvak Jews who drove very low, and how can you be so slow and so dangerous at the same time, which is what he was. And he drove mostly with his face pressed against the windshield as well. It was a terrifying experience. So I thought, oh, you know, tempest-tossed is easy. Try my Uncle Joe's driving instead. You know. It was a wonderful, it was an extraordinary experience. 64 was everything. It was the burning summer. Jewish boys, Goodman and Schwerner, were going to meet their destiny and fate in Mississippi. The World's Fair was going on. The Beatles had arrived, so we were, my friend and I, who were in America for the first time, we were covering the conventions in San Francisco and Atlantic City. We never made it to Cow Palace, but Atlantic City we did. And through the agency of a friend of my professors, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, no less. So we would say, they'd say, oh God, do you know the Beatles? Of course I know the Beatles, known them forever. It was very easy to do that. And so we had the most wonderful time. But we thought of, when we did go south, actually, my friend Martin and I, and we heard about, you know, we knew what was going on, and we knew Riverside Church was a great center of the civil rights movement. And we did have this extraordinary feeling that, you know, the Jewish experience in America was absolutely braided together with thinking about the fate of the disadvantaged, and for all the problems that also existed between black and Jewish community, documented in the incredible archives here. It was also something to celebrate and rejoice in, the sheer kind of altruistic determination of the Jewish community. So that is something to celebrate, and something we tried to represent in the particularly Program 4, the kind of continuity between the experience of those who sat in Odessa and Vilnius and Kovno and elsewhere and thought about the fate of Jews in Europe with preserving this sense of kind of warrior altruism, I describe it as, which thank God we still all have. I want to end though with beautiful Emma, because I'm glad I recovered this. I mean, I'm sure I didn't recover it, but I hadn't realized how much, you know, the whole of that new Colossus poem. And also she has, if you want to read a poem called Assurance, this is an outrageously gorgeous piece of lesbian poetry. Yes, that everybody leaving immediately to go and read it. That Emma Lazarus, we don't know if she was or she wasn't, but she sure wrote the poetry. It's this. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm not going to be reading this. This is a family occasion. However, I do want to end with one wonderful piece. She was very witty. She was, notwithstanding having, you know, sort of this sort of desperately intense relationship with Emerson, and she also, I mean, there were many other great figures in New York letters, actually, many of whom very nice to her. One, I can't remember who it was, one of the Lowell family, on reading the new Colossus, and said, I liked your sonnet so much better than a statue itself, which I thought was a lovely compliment. This is called, and I want to finish with this, as a kind of tribute to you, Emma, wherever you are, and in Parnassus, I'm sure you are. Kosher Parnassus, well, fantastic. But Kosher Parnassus will look, I don't know, something like I don't know, sort of Chania, you know, in Crete at the height of its Sephardi glory, but a little bit like the Catskills as well, actually. So there you are, she's stuck there. So this is a poem called The Poet and the Critic, and it's lovely because it's an attack on the pedantry of critics before nature. And she is at the same time taking on, you know, as a big fat target, Keats. And it's not clear who's won there, but here's Emma on The Poet and the Critic. No man had ever heard a nightingale when once a keen-eyed naturalist was stirred to study and define what is a bird, to classify by rote and book, nor fail to mark the structure and to note the scale whereon its song might possibly be heard. Thus far, no farther, so he spake these words, when all of a sudden the nightingale, oh, deeper, higher than he could divine, that all unearthly, untaught strain. He saw the plain brown warbler, unabashed. Not mine, he cried, the error, the fatal flaw, no bird is this, its songs are beyond my lines. Were it a bird, would obey and answer to my law. Not to Emma's, obviously. Thank you so much. Thank you, Emma. Thank you.
I'm standing here with an extraordinary human being who's really the Renaissance man of history, Simon Schama. First of all, Mazal Tov.
Thank you very much.
Touch.
Thank you.
You know, at some point, you and I will sit together in studio. This isn't
That'd
fair.
be good.
This is on
Right.
one foot. So I have one question for you. You have done extraordinary work in various fields of history. Simon, I want you to talk to me for one moment about what happens to you when you pay attention, as you have now, to the Jewish part of your work and Jewish history.
Right.
What's it meant to you, Simon, to spend now and to create now this extraordinary body of Jewish history?
Well, there's a public comment and a private comment on that. The public comment is that because so much misunderstanding, so much prejudice, and so much hatred has revived, you have to believe that's a result of ignorance. If somebody actually, you know, dares to call the Israelis Nazis, it means they don't know what a Nazi is. So you feel every so often moments happen where history is not simply a matter of professors talking to each other. You hear kind of alarm bell going off and you say, it's time to talk to the rest of the world. The private and personal thing is historians, including me, often run away from their own personal background, not out of cowardice, but out of a sense that, you know, emotion, subjectivity will get in the way. Well, it turns out when you love a subject and you're drawn to it, emotion and subjectivity are just fine, because it's another way of saying from history you draw a sense of what your moral norms ought to be, your moral, ethical, and political norms ought to be. A very clever historian once described history as an experimental garden where you go and discover what's right and what's wrong. That's more or less what I felt. But obviously,
I did write one Jewish history book a long time ago about the Rothschilds, but then I was like Jonah. I was interested in running away. And like that
What brought you back? What brought you back?
Well, it was on my mind a lot, really. And my parents have both died, and I thought, I should have done this one. So it's a kind of teshuvah in both the sense of a return and a repentance, I think.
One day again, we'll sit together.
We will.
But I want to say this to you. Everybody in this room is in love with you, and I want you to.
They need to get a life in that case.
I want you to hear, Warren. What you've been able to do as a historian is open history for so many of us.
I appreciate
and understand that is a gift you've given us.
That's important.
Simon Schama.
Thank you.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to Jem, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.